Hi, so what do you think? Let's go. Now I've already made several videos in which I compare my A-Design's hammer equalizer to a plugin. Even if the plugin and the hardware are not exactly the same thing, I still always like to have a sort of benchmark to compare a plugin against. Because I really like this hammer equalizer. And I will link some of those videos in the description. Now recently I saw a comment on one of those videos in which somebody mentioned that he used to have a hammer equalizer as well, but that he sold it after he cloned it with the Waves Q-Clone plugin. Because to him the results were so striking that he didn't feel the need to keep the hardware anymore. So that sounded really interesting to me, not that I want to sell my A-Design's hammer, but maybe it would provide me with the opportunity to use multiple instances of this equalizer in a mix, for example. So in this video I'm going to clone my favorite hardware equalizer at various settings, and I'll let you listen to the results, and I'll provide you even the audio files so you can listen in your own DAW, and I will also provide you with the Q-Clone preset files so that you can use these settings in your own Q-Clone if you have it. And by the way, I've set Waves Q-Clone a couple of times now, as well as A-Design's hammer, but this video is not sponsored. I've paid for the equalizer and the plugin with my own money. So if you'd like to show some appreciation, please like the video, subscribe to the channel and ring the little bell icon if you want to know when I post another video. Or use any of the affiliate links to these stores which are in the description. If you want to buy anything at these stores, I will get a small commission, no cost to you. Now Waves Q-Clone. This plugin really consists of two separate plugins. One is to capture an actual hardware equalizer, and the other one is to play back the captured profile or preset of one specific setting of that equalizer. So there's no knobs on the Q-Clone plugin, which allows you to continuously vary like you can on an actual equalizer, but you capture it at a specific setting. And especially for my mix bus setting, that could be quite interesting, because on 90% of my mixes, I use this equalizer on the mix bus, always in the same setting. So let's have a look in Cubase. I have one track on which I have set up the Q Capture plugin. Now if you look at this track, you're seeing that the input is taken from, let me go to mono 1 left and let the output go to mono out left. And if you look at my audio connections, you can see that I have set up mono 1 left and right to inputs 3 and 4 on my RME interface, and outputs 3 and 4 are going to mono out left and right. And my A-Design's hammer is set up between those in and outputs. Now on the other channel I have set up the Q-Clone plugin itself, and let me set it to capture mode. And if I now turn on the Q Capture plugin, you can see that it starts what is called transmitting to the output of the channel. And it's basically sending a frequency sweep to the output of this channel. And if I now also enable monitoring on this channel, you can see that it also starts receiving in the Q Capture plugin. And the captured frequency spectrum is sent to the Q-Clone plugin over here, which is in capture mode. So currently my equalizer is set up to my mix bus setting, but if I turn the knobs on the left channel, then you can see that it changes the captured curve. Or turn on the high cut and turn on the low cut. Now if I'm now happy with the setting on my equalizer, I can push the hold button and I can turn off the capturing, and I can basically save a Q-Clone preset of this captured curve. And as you can see, I've already done this for various settings on my hammer equalizer. Now there's one important thing that you need to realize, is that this plugin only captures the actual EQ curve. It does not, for example, capture any maybe subtle compression that happens in the tubes in the equalizer, if any, or any harmonic distortion or saturation. Because if you look at the output of this equalizer in Plugin Doctor, you can see that this is the curve of my regular mix bus setting, a boost at 50 and a boost at the high end. But if you look at the harmonic analysis in Plugin Doctor, you can see that more is happening because there are actually some harmonics generated by this equalizer. So there is some saturation, and that's not captured by the Q-Clone plugin. Now with the Q Capture plugin, you can only capture one channel of the equalizer at a time, but you can then still put a stereo version of the Q-Clone plugin on the track and put the profile of one channel on there, and then basically both stereo channels will have the same profile and sound the same. Now when you just looked at those curves in Plugin Doctor, you may have noticed that the left and right channel are not exactly equal. There were some subtle differences. So I did actually also want to capture that. So I also made a preset of the right channel of my equalizer at the same settings, just to account for those small differences between left and right, which may give you the impression of a slightly wider effect. Maybe. We'll hear it in a minute. Now, it is not possible to play this back with one Q-Clone plugin. So what I did is I added another Waves plugin, and this one is free, by the way, which is called the Studio Rack. And the Studio Rack basically allows you to make a combination of existing plugins, even non-wave ones nowadays. And you can store that in the Studio Rack. And it also allows you to split the signal on your stereo track into the left and right, or even into mid and side if you want to, and then apply different effects on both sides. And in this case, I've used a Q-Clone on the left side with a profile that I captured of my left channel. And I used another Q-Clone instance on the right side with a profile that I captured of the right side of my equalizer. So let's listen to the various clone settings that I tried. And the first example is actually from a Pro Mix Academy course called Advanced Mixing with Mark Daniel Nelson. And the song is called Only Love is Real by Todd Kessler. And I'll put a link to both in the description below if you want to check them out. I first want to let you listen to the track without any equalizer and then with the hammer so that you can sort of see what the equalizer is doing. And since this is a mix bus setting, it's subtle. But let's have a listen.
2 feet back on dry land, and I'm ready to go out again. I long for the sun.
So if you listen carefully, you can hear a bit of a bass boost and a bit of a boost in the high frequencies due to this setting that I'm using on the hammer, which, like I said, I pretty much use on 95% of my mixes on the mix bus, and I start mixing into this from the get-go along with my mix bus compressor. Now this track is a rendered version of the track with the hammer. It's a bit easier than having to turn the hardware knobs in between various examples. On this track I have Q-Clone, the stereo version with just the left channel preset. So the left channel is basically put on both sides of the stereo spectrum. And on the dual track I have the Studio Rack with different presets on the left and right channel. Let's see if we can hear a difference. Starting with the hardware.
2 feet back on dry land, and I'm ready to go out again. I long for the salt in the air, giving me freedom, taking my care.
Yeah, well, so it's subtle, right? So if you want to take a more detailed listen, you can download the tracks and the Q-Clone presets with a link in the description below. Let's now listen to the differences on a drum track. So I'll first let you shortly listen to the track without an equalizer on there and then with the hardware on there, so you can sort of see what I'm going for. So again, a bit more of a boost on the low end and a boost on the high end at a slightly different frequency. So let's now listen to the difference between the hardware and the cloned preset. And this time I've only used the dual preset, so with different presets on the left and right channel to more closely mimic the actual hardware. Let's listen. So can you hear a difference? This was actually the drum track of a song of my band The Wash called The Calling, which I'll also provide a link in the description to. Now next up is a vocal track from another song of my band The Wash called 500 Miles. And this track was recorded by Perfect Sounds Unleashed. So thanks for providing that track, Peter. And let's listen to the differences. This is the track as recorded versus going through the hardware.
Storm is rising, the wind is crying, stars are falling down.
So this is a typical setting on the hammer that I use for vocals, usually even already during recording, to make them all mix ready. and make them stand out a bit more in a pop rock mix. So let's listen to the differences between the hardware and the clone with Q-Clone.
Storm is rising, the wind is crying, stars are falling down. Hope is rising, the world is trying to keep those stars in place. Put a smile back on your face.
So what do you think? Can you hear any differences between the hardware and the clone preset via Q-Clone? Let me know in the comments what you hear and what you prefer. And again, you can download these tracks so you can listen more closely yourself. And you can also download the presets of my captured equalizer if you want to use them in the Waves Q-Clone yourself. Now, if you're interested in these kinds of videos in which I compare hardware against plugins, I have a whole playlist in which I compare some of the hardware that I have in my studio over here to plugins. So have a look at that, enjoy, and see you soon.